just don't. Always makes me regardless, one.
So my sister just can stand in action and do it. Yeah, they don't really check it with garlic.
What's no way around. It's literally what it is, like, I need butter mix.
That works. I think
But,
good. Stephanie's first run on.
I think I got it.
Sometimes they get.
Microphone's not working.
Is it top?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Johnson, could you please call roll?
Yes. Ian Keeney.
Here.
Mardo.
Here.
Friedland.
Here.
Grimpy.
Here.
I'm here. Fistor.
Here.
Ronstadt.
Here.
We have a motion, we have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, looking over the consent agenda, are there any items that a member would like to remove or further discuss, or needs a question of clarification?
I have one. It's for section, I'm so sorry.
Don't be sorry.
I will be sorry because I just had it pulled up and I closed out of it. And I think it's a fairly quick question to answer, and I apologize for not getting this sent out beforehand. This is on me. For the treasurer's resolution, so with Lyndall's retirement, this goes through 2025. Is there something special that we'll have to do?
You'll have to do it again next year.
Okay, so it won't matter, we'll just, okay, because it was just through that date of 2025. Okay, that was my only item.
So it's okay to keep it?
Yes.
Anybody else? Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda in its entirety as presented, which includes the following: the Board of Education meeting minutes from May 16th, closed session meeting minutes from May 16th, personnel report, actual payrolls, bills and checks, insurance renewals, renewal of service contracts, policy 6 subset 21-210, and policy 6 subset 230, the treasurer's resolution, the North Cook Regional Office of Education Intermediate Service Center, and the Illinois Department of Health and Family Services, and fiscal year 24 interest earnings resolution.
So moved.
Moved by Friedland,
Second.
second by Camardo. Any questions or any comments? Okay, could you take roll, please?
Yes.
Fistor.
Yes.
Ronstadt.
Yes.
I vote yes. Grimpy.
Yes.
Friedland.
Yes.
Camardo.
Yes.
Keeney.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Next up is board communications. Does anyone have anything they would like to add?
I just want to say that the 8th grade graduation was wonderful. Congratulations to all of our graduates, and to Mary Kromesky and Kyle for putting on a beautiful ceremony. So I thought it was really neat, and you can see there was a lot of motion out of the crowd, so it was really, really nice. Thank you.
I was at the end of school bash at Euclid with a bunch of board members, so that was awesome.
Yes.
Hugely attended, which is not a surprise, but it's always nice to see. So that was a great event. Anybody else?
I do want to say that Bill and I attended the board meet. Oh, and Jody too. Sorry. We attended the board meeting at the Village Hall to honor our track individuals that went to state. And it was also a really nice award. I thought.
Up here.
Oh,
Pass it
I'm
on.
sorry.
Anyone would like to look at it?
I was just gonna say, I'm like, I apologize if I just stole your thunder. Okay, good, because,
I was hoping it would have come before mine.
so it was very nice and it was really neat, and I think that the students appreciated it, I hope, so.
Oh, it's nice to have the students' names on there. That is very nice.
It's really wasn't loud, it was really cool. Very nice.
Okay, we also had a nice donation, so thank you to Commissioner Maggie Trevor, who donated Brookfield Zoo tickets for our students and families, and they will be passed out during summer school. So that brings us to RTEA comments. Bob, you have the floor.
On behalf of the RTA Executive Committee and the entire membership, I'd like to thank you all for our wonderful continued ongoing working relationship with, between ourselves and the admin and the board. I'd also like to welcome Mrs. Keeney to the Board of Education. And I know that this is really a thankless job. So thank you all for all the time and effort you put in. It doesn't go unnoticed. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any visitor comments? Go through the whole policy, but we have none. limited effort of time, we'll just skip that. New business, education services, the year-end review presentation. This is information only.
Start. Do you want the light off? It helps a little
Yes,
bit.
sure.
Yeah, okay. Am I in control here, Patty?
You are.
Yay. I just want to check this. Okay, so maybe you remember, but we come together every year at this time to kind of review the progress from the year. So I'm going to kick it off and talk a little bit about, I'll touch on the strategic plan and our district accomplishments this year, and then we'll shift over to all of the buildings. So thank you all for being here to share your accomplishments and the hard work that we have been doing. So just to kick it off, so highlights for today. I've outlined these 3 areas because we are going to start with our strategic plan goals. Everything is tied to our strategic plan. As a reminder, we developed those goals in 2020 with a completion date of 2025. And then I will highlight our annual district goals. So this was the first year that I had set district goals for us. Something was missing between our strategic plan and our building goals. We needed something to narrow that scope a little bit. So this was the first year that I gave all of the buildings and the administration some district goals to do their work under. So that helped narrow our scope from that really broad plan to more narrow, which is the triangle behind there. So then finally, you'll hear from each of the principals on their building goals from this last year. And so I want to preface the work by reminding everyone that last year at this time is when we began the work for the upcoming year. So that means that we finished the 21-22 school year still coming out of COVID, right? We were still testing weekly during that school year. We were still quarantining kids. There was quite a bit of instability. So for the principals to plan for the upcoming year right after that year ended, they needed to do a lot of anticipating on what might transpire this year. So we had test scores, we had data, but we knew that, the last couple of years had been fluctuating. So they looked at that information, but also needed to know that moving forward, they had to be ready to pivot and be ready for things to maybe not be the same as what the data had said during that 21-22 year. So we planned for what we thought the year would look like, knowing again that we may need to pivot or readjust. So going back to the strategic plan, same goals that you saw in January that you continue to see. We developed these and I highlighted them in blue. Our Head Ready academic goal is having 65% of our students meeting growth targets in reading and math by 2025. And our Heart Ready goal is reaching the more or most level from the 5 essential survey in those specific domains: supportive environment, grit, and emotional health. All right, looking at the district goals. So, this time last year, I provided goals in these 3 bucket areas that match the objectives of the strategic plan. So again, these narrow the focus from the strategic plan for the buildings. These were designed to support the work that we had already started, support the strategic plan, and again, narrow the scope for the buildings so that the focus was similar and we weren't running on different paths. They didn't have to do work in all of these areas, but I presented to them in June and asked them to choose the areas that they wanted to really dig into for the following year. That made sense for their building, where they were in their work. So these were designed to be loose tight. So same end goal. If you were working on culture and climate, same end goal, but how you approach that goal or how you got to that end goal may be different, and you'll probably hear some of that today, depending on the dynamics of your building, your teaching staff, your student population. You can get there a different way, but same end goal for them. This year we also explicitly talked about equity work running through all of these strands. So we needed to move from that separate plan to deliberate application and effort to apply the equity work into these areas, into our work already started. And so we talked a lot about that and move it from that separate idea into application and embedding. Again, just a reminder of our objectives. This is where the district goals fall under: collaboration, curriculum, community, and communication. And we are going to talk about first our district key results. So I'm going to have Carrie come up first to talk about collaboration, and then I'll jump back in.
So for collaboration, we had, can't hear me, just wait a
You can turn your mic on.
It works.
Oh,
I think, yeah, the unit was on.
there, yep. Hold on. There you go. There you go. Nope.
You get a hold button down.
Oh,
whole
really?
time?
Okay.
Hello, I can hold it.
Yep.
Is that better? Okay. I'll hold it. So for collaboration, there were
cross-district learning opportunities where staff were given the opportunity to talk to people that they don't get to talk to every day. Some examples were that we combined Institute Day with the other D214 feeder schools. We received some really positive feedback from staff about that, and we'll be repeating that January 8th, 2024. Additionally, we had cross-school learning opportunities that were given to kids all the way through to adults. We brought special area teachers together, content area teachers. Students had multiple opportunities to visit other schools. So middle school visited Prairie Trails to learn about the building and its design. Spanish classes practiced reading their books to younger students. Raven leaders were able to run a day of PE for kindergartners, which was a great leadership opportunity. We also had collaborative opportunities for fifth graders from both schools to be able to get to know each other before middle school. So they had a picnic at the park. They were able to go to Sunrise, and they came to the middle school for the play and musical performances. The kindergartners also had a chance to spend a morning at their home school for first grade so that they would get familiar with their building a little bit. Additionally, we had Net Zero, which was a collaborative work of many, which helped us reach our target and achieve our goals. We also had Advanced Adaptive Schools, which provided advanced training and implementation for all administrators in the district to really work on how to facilitate their building teams for a shared vision and outcomes. And we had infrastructure planning supports, which connected really to our climate and culture. It was collaborative planning groups where staff were able to provide input to support the facilities planning process and furniture plan. We also had the soccer pitch, which was a great partnership between the village, Euclid, and the community.
So those are just some examples.
Okay, moving over to curriculum. One of our target areas was improving access to innovative technologies. You heard from Matt last month, so you heard about that in detail. And I think that's the key there. Innovative technologies, we're really starting to build that into our everyday curriculum, and it's not a separate entity. The curriculum resource audit, that is something that is ongoing. I think the key with curriculum resource audits is that you stay on target. You have a map, you have different curriculums that you are auditing this year, but it's a lot of work. So if you can stay consistent and get that done and work with a team, then we've met our goal there. So continue to do a nice job revisiting and auditing our curriculum on the cycle that we plan to. I would like to also highlight that this is a good example of where the equity work came in, especially with the music audit. They talked a lot about what types of music and what types of backgrounds they were hitting with their music. So again, infusing that equity work into the work that we're doing is a better use of our efforts and skill set. The data warehouse launched. We had a new data warehouse to specifically monitor our multilingual students and the former multilingual students' growth. And the key there is that we make decisions based on data. That's one of our goals. And so if we have bad data, then we're making bad decisions. And this warehouse really stored and allowed us to access the appropriate data for us to make good decisions. We found in our AROI process a few years ago. We worked for weeks on that, and in the end, we found that our data was poor. So we couldn't make any good decisions there. So that's been key this year. We have a block schedule implementation, which really has had an impact on all tiers. Tier 1, it has provided the teachers and the administration the opportunity to go into depth about best practice instruction. When you move from 40 minutes to basically 80 minutes, you have to change your approach. The reduction in class periods alone for kids is life-changing. They were moving so frequently and having to work with so many teachers. By basically cutting that in half, you've changed the environment for them. District committee work, again, ESP mentors, tech committee, wellness committee, a lot of these committees you guys have seen throughout the course of the year. We've recognized them, we've highlighted the work that they've done, but these committees provide us with sustainable systems. We want to make sure that, you know, when people leave, we don't fall apart, that these processes stay. And so the good work of these separate committees allows for those systems to continue on. Next is communication. I'm going to invite Matt up.
All right. We focus under communication, we focus on some data retention and some network security upgrades. So in terms of data retention, we did integrate a new SAN storage system. So this provided some increases to our data storage utilization, as well as improvements in terms of that data with the protection and the security. We upgraded our data backup systems as well. So this ensures for that sensitive data that we do have to make sure that it's backed up regularly, that it's safe, and that it's accessible when we do need it. In terms of network upgrades, we had some new battery backups added to all of our data closets. So in times that we need some redundancy, so let's say that the internet goes out or there's a power outage, our infrastructure is still working and for a period of time so that we can still have things functioning. So those have been upgraded. And then we did add some new core switches to the E-rate program in all of our data closets. Video security surveillance, you're aware, we actually came to the board with an RFP that got approved. So here at the middle school, at Prairie Trails, at the admin center, at the warehouse, we added new security surveillance systems. That was a collaborative process with many different departments and many admin. E-Norman won out for that. We also implemented a policy, a board policy, which is a collaborative effort between the union and admin team. And then we also implemented an admin procedure. So how are you using it? How are you not using it in order to ensure the safety and security of our staff and students? We also focused on technology in terms of facilitating communication and improvements to teaching and learning. So new copiers and printers, you're also aware of. Those are going in, have already started, but are being implemented and installed this summer. New interactive projectors, which you're also aware of, that we're implementing into all classrooms, as well as when we're doing the infrastructure upgrades, those are going to be implemented. Flip touch Chromebooks for our instructional staff, as well as our related service staff, you're also aware of because you approve that. iPads for new incomers, newcomers, our ML students. That was part of that EdTech initiative grant that did so well that we're going to be implementing that at all of our schools moving forward. Podcasting equipment, Class VR headsets, and then Vivi screen sharing that we have not only at Prairie Trails because they don't have interactive displays in their classrooms, but also in all of our conference rooms, our LRCs, and our gymnasiums throughout the district. And then finally, we redefined internal and external communication systems. So this involves Swift K-12, which is our mass communication system that replaced Bright Arrow, and we leverage that on a regular basis to communicate with our community, not only report cards, but events that are happening, whether it's security events or regular events that we want to make them aware of. Meet the Teacher was our parent-teacher conference planning. So people were able to sign up. And then last year, when we were still doing remote parent-teacher conferences, we leveraged the video component. So we have that as well. Report card layouts were completely streamlined. I don't know if you noticed that. They were redeveloped so that they were easier to read digitally and then were more consistent throughout our entire district from school to school. We have a monthly district newsletter that's shared out to staff and families. Quick fact resources for our community. So we have a one-page brag sheet hiring signs that you will see throughout our district and the community, and then construction one-pager updating the community on what's happening with our construction projects. And then finally, we also leverage Securely Aware, which alerts staff and admin on any alerts with students in terms of safety concerns or mental health concerns. And so we set up procedures in place for those as they come through in order to how we are addressing those and they're not falling through the cracks. And I'm going to turn it over to Jody.
Okay, and finally, on the area of community. So first we have the school safety audit, which again was another presentation that we brought to the board. It was very important to recalibrate after COVID and get back with our procedures and making sure that our staff and students and everyone knew how to make sure to run the safety procedures. The next three are really that community outreach. So we have increased opportunities over the last couple of years for parent involvement. I've been meeting regularly with the PTC presidents. We had our first joint district outing at the Wolves game that the PTC had planned jointly. We had so many opportunities for parents to be in the building, whether that was STEM nights, the online safety presentation, math nights, reading nights, and at the music events, it was standing room only. And so that we talked about often was something to celebrate, that there were not literally enough chairs in the district to fill the spaces that needed filling. And even, too bad Frank's not here, but record blizzard sales. So families came out and we had lots of opportunities for families to engage at our buildings. So that was definitely a celebration this year. The other ones, we had some board engagement opportunities. You guys came to open house. We started the brewing with the board. We had a really significant number of applicants for our open board seat. We have community partnerships with the Rotary and the Chamber that we have had a regular presence at. We have, I would say, increased our collaboration with the police. We had Fist Bump Fridays this year. We hosted the beat meeting. We participated in the 5K. Donna didn't participate, but she watched. But it was nice. So we are really working on these key partnerships and trying to grow them over the course of the year. I mean, I could continue to go on with Higher Up Ministries. The soccer pitch is a good example of working with the village to get something done. Our NSSEO partnership is extremely valuable, and so on. And then continuation of key live stream events. So that was something that we had to deliberately make the call. We weren't going to live stream everything, but we wanted to live stream the key events that we knew families would want to see. So a lot of that is the music programs, and we regularly look at the participation rates, and it is not uncommon to have 30 or more families viewing online, in addition to the standing room only. So we have continued those live stream events and continued to evaluate the importance and the need from the community. And then finally, really food service. I mean, we implemented, honestly, Lyndall did a great job with this. I never thought it would take off as well as it did, but that was a huge task for us as a district, hiring somebody and then getting our entire food service in order and not from Arlington Heights anymore. So that was a really big accomplishment this year. So that highlights some of our district key results. And now I'm going to shift over to the school goals year in review, starting with Prairie Trails.
Good evening. You get to hear from me again. Earlier in the year, I spoke about Prairie Trails when we were looking at the construction and all the things that we've learned, things that we've changed and adjusted. So this is just a little continuation of that, talking about our school goals. They go ahead and they match along with our school improvement plan, looking at Head Ready and Heart Ready. Really our Head Ready looking at improving literacy and numeracy skills, really focusing on that Tier 1 instruction. So we found after our first year of Prairie Trails, we were merging, we merged with Euclid's teachers and Indian Grove teachers. So it really was working on making these Prairie Trails teachers. Everyone came in with their own little way of doing things, but things were different. So learning the first year, we looked at goals that we needed to do to make our building more cohesive and make it Prairie Trails as the foundation of our learners for our district. So looking at that tier 1 starting out, all of the things over on the left and even the assistant support I'll talk about was really focused on those foundational skills, really that early literacy and numeracy skills. That focus was on that reading. So looking at the fidelity of our phonics instruction, we had a new phonics program that was implemented. So working on the fidelity of that, implementing that appropriately, and all of our teachers were teaching it the same way, similarly, and the goal was that equity. We wanted all of our kids to have those same equitable experiences, whether they were in Miss B's class or Miss C's class, whatever it was, we wanted our students to have those same equitable experiences. We also implemented sound walls. So it was kind of a pilot program that came to fruition between our instructional coach, Janine Wagner, and our speech pathologist, Holly Lemajor. She ended up going into our classrooms, Holly, 1 day a week, and starting to implement sound walls. And it was a way to bring that encoding piece in. We focused a lot on decoding the reading, but we really wanted that sound wall piece of it to bring in the writing piece of it. And we really found, as you'll see in some of our data, it really was one of the key factors to success that we saw at Prairie Trails. Now we're learning that our phonics program is actually implementing sound walls as part of the curriculum. So we've been working on collaborating with Bill and Karen on how they can kind of carry that up to first and second grades with their youngest learners. That tier 1, we also spent a lot of times on must-dos and may-dos. We found out initially, the first year, teachers were doing different things, so we really focused on what is the key and things that need to be happening in your classroom for good instruction that's happening with fidelity. So we focused a lot on that. And then the classroom assistant support. So we really worked on our building schedule, having our teacher assistants in our kindergarten classrooms when small group reading instruction was happening. So we were able to have 2 adults in there to help support all learners, so everyone was getting a little bit more of what they needed. We also, looking at the Heart Ready part of our building, was really coming together as a community. So it's a brand new school, so we focused that first year on starting to build that, and we're continuing it. We have a really successful PTC. We had a lot of great events that really helped build community, and we had some nice parent nights to help facilitate that as well. So a lot of cool things going on at Prairie Trails. Slide here. The other buildings don't have as much data to share, and I'm just going to breeze through it quickly, but we never know from year to year what comes in, what the students are coming in with. We do some parent surveys, we see if they had some preschool or not, but for the most part, we're planning on kind of blind a little bit because we don't know what the students are coming with. When they go to first grade, they have all of our data that we're able to share, and they have a little better way to plan. So that's where that tier 1 focus in our instruction really was important. So if you go ahead and look, this is early literacy, 2021, 22, and then 22, 23. You'll notice the triangle on the right, that spring data, healthy triangles, you're looking at 80% in the green when you look at data. So 80% in the green, you're looking at about 15% yellow and that 5% red. So when you're looking at the difference between the two, it really is marked improvement from last year to this year. Part of that was the focus on the tier 1, but also really having our approving last year to hire an interventionist. So we did have an interventionist this year in kindergarten, which really helped support those kiddos that were coming in that had never had any school before. So that really was a nice difference to go ahead and see, and really helped. From last year to this year, early numeracy. So we're learning from year to year what works and what we need to focus on in our building. And that's Prairie Trails. I'm going to turn it over to Bill. And Emily.
Hello. So for Indian Grove this year, we really focused on two of the district goals that Jody had shared earlier, the best practice instructional strategies and the climate and culture. So the left side there kind of lists off the best practice instructional strategies, the first one being the work that we did this year with the power and priority standards, which hits that best practice instructional strategy of goal setting. This was an initiative that we took on as an entire district. At the beginning of the year, the direction was really just to make sure that we are planning with it and using that as the end goal. What do we want students to know or be able to do by the time they're done with a unit, by the time they're done with the grade level? Around mid-year, that shifted into the common assessment work that we were doing as a district. The Indian Grove and Euclid teams met numerous times throughout the year to work on some common assessments in the area of reading and reading response, which I think Karen's going to talk about too when she comes up here. Un poquito. The other piece that came with goal setting was also the time that we spent collaborating and working together. So on Thursdays, we offered a common structured planning time where the focus was either on curriculum or it was student problem solving. So having those goals in mind as we're planning for curriculum helped to set the end goal for what it was that we were doing as we were meeting, so that we were using our time the best way possible. The next part, the scheduling and sectioning, has to do with the best practice instructional strategy of just right learning. We tried something last year based off of the data that we were getting that showed about 25% of our students in math and reading were performing at the 80th percentile or above in math and Ames web testing. So that's a pretty big chunk of our population that's on the top tier, the top part of that triangle when you think about student performance. With that in mind, we tried this a scheduling technique called total school cluster grouping, with the idea is to minimize the range of students in a classroom to make it easier for the teacher to differentiate for groups of students. So you don't have the highest highs and the lowest lows and everything in between. It really is a little more grouped together into groups of about 5 or 6 students, so that the teacher can have multiple students in the classroom and prepare lessons to meet the needs of the students in the class. It makes differentiation easier in theory as we go forward. So that, and then we also looked into we had it in our schedule as RTI time. RTI stands for response to intervention. We changed the idea or the name of that to WIN, what I need now, really to make it a little bit more inclusive for all students. RTI, when we talk about that, usually we're referring to the students that need extra support, that tend to be on that bottom of the triangle when we look at where students are performing. What we noticed too when we looked at the data was that we're really good at bringing the students that perform in the bottom 35th percentile from the beginning of the year, lifting them up. We want to make sure that we are offering those same opportunities for growth to the students that are at that higher end, specifically the 90th percentile and above. So with the change in how we view that extra time during the day and how the students are grouped, that is the idea to meet those students on the higher end as well as we meet the students on the lower end. The Heart Ready goal, climate and culture, has to do with our multi-tiered system of support, thinking about behavior support and intervention. So this kind of came from the idea that there was a lot of new laws that were enacted right before COVID and during COVID about student discipline and the things that we need to keep in mind when we are talking about and dealing with behavior. As well as a lot of surveys that are out there. There was a Ed Week survey recently that found that 70% of educators felt like the student behavior is a little worse now than it was before COVID. So really making sure that we have the right tools and the right information to meet all students where they're at. And I'm gonna let Emily talk a little bit more about that.
Okay, so as far as how we pulled our data for behavior, we have a weekly social emotional team meeting on Fridays, and we would pull data that included our office discipline referrals, which would include like minors and major behavior incidents. We would pull our attendance, our nurse visits, to really look at what students are demonstrating a need, either externally or internally perhaps, to be able to make sure that we're addressing those needs. And so that would include problem solving within that. that team, also with, as Bill mentioned, those Kid Day problem-solving teams within the Thursday team time for teachers. Really, again, going back to those structures and supports and how we can support our students that are demonstrating a need. Similarly, we would have a monthly meeting with our lunch recess team to be able to teach them, talk through some of the observations that the data was really highlighting, that incidents were happening during those unstructured times. How do we embed different supports and common language to promote those expected behaviors during those times when kids are more likely to demonstrate some of those unexpected behaviors? So some of those different supports and structured helped us with different teams. Additionally, like on a daily basis, Mr. Timmons and I do recorded morning announcements. Should you ever want to check them out, they're on our YouTube channel. But I think we use our data to embed different natural opportunities to remind students of expectations. Like during testing season, we're always reminding our students to have a level 0 voice in the hallways. Things like that to really help promote those positive behaviors and expectations throughout our system.
We also wanted to build in opportunities to be flexible with the way things were going throughout the year, which I do appreciate how the system that we have now, instead of setting a SMART goal for the entire year, having those 90 days opportunities to reflect and think about how things are working and what we need to change, what do we want to keep doing. So right around February or March, we did get a lot of information or input from the staff about wanting some more professional development, professional learning related to behavior. So that was, we were able to spend the last part of the school year with our Thursday time really hitting on that and working with our school improvement team and our building leadership team to really solidify that for the end of this school year so that we could start the school year on the right note in the fall when we come back. The last piece we have there is the adult collaboration and support, and that really has to do with continuing the implementation of the adaptive school strategies that we all hold in such high regard. Another piece that Emily had done when I was on my leave in January is really work with our building leadership team about the norms of collaboration and how they can implement that when they're working with their grade level teams and leading those Thursday meetings. Like I said, we also took staff feedback related to topics for professional learning, and our ESP learning was a big part of that, led by Chris McLaughlin, our ESP mentor. She did an awesome job of using that NSSEO partnership to organize and get feedback from the ESP staff on some professional learning opportunities for them on Thursday as well. That is it for us. Karen and Sarah are next.
Okay. You're making me do more than one thing at a time. That's not easy. Not during the school year anyway. So I'm not going to repeat so much of what Bill and Emily shared because we went back and forth a couple times in planning tonight. Should we have the same slide? Because so much of what we're doing is collaborative. Bill and I work really closely together. When he's doing an initiative, I want to know all about it. When I'm doing something, he wants to know all about it. And sometimes we're ready for it, and sometimes we're not ready for it. But that communication piece has been just an enormous boon, I think, for our elementary schools. At Euclid, like Bill, we are looking at best practices and instruction to support the district. Specifically at Euclid for the last several years, even through COVID, defining success criteria for math and reading. And so the first two bullets on the left side address that. And we really have, we started this work at the teacher level during COVID in prioritizing what's the most important thing we need to do. We don't have a normal experience. We need to prioritize what we're doing with our students. And that urgency lent to what's so important in instruction is that focus and prioritizing what we're learning. So when you see or hear Christy talk about priority standards and power standards, that comes from that concept of really focusing on what's most important so that we know we have a better opportunity to measure growth and success. And so at Euclid, partnering with IG, we were able to share the work we'd done already and then build that into a district commitment to a common reading response rubric so that all first grade teachers across the whole district are using the same success criteria when students respond to reading. And same with second through fifth grade. And that's in both schools. Same expectations, same rigorous learning and reading experiences. And then similar to that, but different, we've also been working on at Euclid a math problem solving rubric, common success criteria. And after several years and looking at my staff this year, we said by the end of this year, we're gonna have a common rubric. And we do, first through fifth grade, same rubric, the entire school. Compliments to our first grade team, had the most rigorous rubric in the building when we started to bring it all together. So that's work that, for example, I literally just shared with Bill as both of our staffs embrace Eureka, the new math program. One of the things, again, is we anticipate, we don't want to take backward steps when we embrace a new math program or like when we did the reading program. Too often you'll see, oh, it's a new program. That's why our scores went down a little bit. And we don't want to do that. And the data that feeds those bullets is relative. Hold it down. For example, like why reading over math when you see this, you'll see some goals focused on like the priority standards last year. Why the priority standards in ELA? Why the focus on the reading response rubrics as a district and not math? And the reason for that was there was discrepant data, reading versus math, when we looked at data from last school year. So, and that's, again, to Jody's point, maybe bad data, not really sure, coming out of COVID. So we're doing something that's research-based, best practice-based, and good for kids and teachers. The other bullet, the first bullet on the right side, adaptive collaborative strategies, similar to all the schools in District 26, and Jody and Matt talked about adaptive strategies and the various levels of collaboration that we're embedding throughout the school system. And that really speaks to, and I don't want to repeat everything that Bill said, the teams at Euclid are doing the same types of collaborative structures in our team meetings. We're using adaptive strategies as building leadership teams and building committees. So that work, I honestly, when you guys did that whole slide of all of the district bullets, all of the schools have all of those bullets too. So it's just like, what, you could have just done that.
All right. So similarly, the MTSS process, we did collaborate with all of the buildings. We worked really hard on that actually last summer. But like Dr. Megerly said, sorry, you know, we really knew and anticipated some challenges coming out of 21-22 and the amount of students who had interrupted learning of various kinds, right? And so they did exhibit some gaps in learning as well as social skills and executive functioning. So we knew that we really needed a tight system to meet the needs of these students. We've always had a very strong MTSS system, but we wanted to ensure that we were not under-responding or over-responding to student need. And a specific example of that is our spring panorama data showed that almost 2/3 of our 3rd through 5th graders were feeling anxious, right? So that's not an individual respond to each individual student issue. That would take a lot of resources, it wouldn't be efficient, wouldn't be best practice either. So instead, our teacher teams dedicated some bi-weekly conversations to collaborate. How can we embed this throughout the day, throughout our lessons, teaching some skills, right, to the whole grade level. Additionally, we did, and again, this was also district-wide, really tightened up and streamlined our collaborative support team process. So then that would be the case where if there was more of an individual need, a teacher would have access to a specialized team to problem solve and look at how to support that specific student.
I think it's interesting. At graduation, my mic was way up high and Kyle's wasn't quite as high. I'm not sure why, but I'll try my best holding the button down as well. Are we on the right? I know there was like a laser beam and everything. It was really exciting. Okay, so for the middle school, just like you saw for the elementaries and the early learning center, we also have the head ready and heart ready goals. For head ready, like everyone, we're looking at math and reading. Specifically, we're looking for improvement in math and reading scores by increasing math times and increasing literacy and multilingual intervention at the middle school. Heart Ready, we really were focusing on increased staff and student connections, looking at student engagement. With obviously those years of interruption with the pandemic, there was definitely a discrepancy there. So that's something we really wanted to focus on this school year. Looking at our key results, the first one, which I know you've been waiting with bated breath to hear more about, our block schedule and how that worked out. We will have more data for you after this slide. But we really wanted to look at the block schedule and absolutely make the best use of all that extra time that we had. Many of you were here when we first brought up the benefits of a block schedule. Mrs. Johnson can talk about how we've had a 10-period day for as long as any of us can remember. But we really wanted to increase math time. We really wanted to be able to have a class period, a class block, keep the momentum going, not be in, for example, a science lab and have to stop halfway through to clean up and then have to try to restart it the next day. So those are things that we really wanted to kind of focus on so we can really improve that student engagement and, of course, that student growth. Another reason, we were looking at the block schedule, we've been really keeping an eye on student growth, looking at NWA MAPS growth, IER growth. Last spring, we had 48.6% of our students meet or exceed their RIT goals for reading, which is not exactly where we want it to be. And in math, it was 62.6%, much better. I'd like to say that the block magically solved this problem and that we went way up this year, but that's not quite the case. Again, we're in our first year of this. We also are really kind of investigating what is happening in the spring? Because we were seeing it really, especially in our 8th graders, our spring scores really drop. So we don't know if that is that spring, testing fatigue, what might that be, but it's something we are definitely exploring. With the intervention blocks, the change to the block schedule, as you know, was a very purposeful decision to increase opportunities to meet student needs. There have been always students who have extra needs in areas like math and reading. And so by having this block schedule, we were able to increase that intervention time. We were able to add an intervention block for literacy, an intervention block for our multilingual learners as well. I don't know how much of this you guys know, but access scores are really actually for the middle school a very high stakes test. If we have students who have not passed access, in the past District 214 said that they should go to Buffalo Grove rather than Hersey. This year, at the very beginning of the year, District 214 told us that as long as students have a certain literacy level, they can come to Hersey. And so we were really working with some of these students who were so close, and obviously all the students were working with them, but we were able to see quite a bit of growth in certain areas. So we did still have a couple students at the end of the year that were supposed to be going to Buffalo Grove, and then literally, like 3 days after 8th grade graduation, we got an email from Hersey saying that they can all go to Hersey now. So that's huge, that's exciting, but we definitely had some students who were really biting their nails at the end, like, am I gonna be able to go to school with my friends, with my neighbors? So still continue to work with those students who are multilingual. We've also been working, like we mentioned, a literacy block for those students who have been showing some deficits. And the good news there is that 60% of our students who were in an intervention block this year, they did increase their scores. So we want to really keep that momentum going. I apologize, I'm talking very quickly, sorry. But also working with our school psych, with our team leaders, working with our intervention teachers, just to kind of help define and redefine the criteria to going in and out of these classes. It's definitely a work in progress, and we're excited to see how we can grow going into next year as well. We're also really excited that we will have a math intervention option next year. We also worked very hard this year as a staff to redefine our values, to kind of redefine our why, what we're doing here. Like I said, we were really working on those connections and trying to figure out what is it that we've been missing for the past couple of years. And we also tried to line those up with some of our students. We had the student focus groups as well, like what do you value? Why are you here? Why do you want to be here? And what can we do to help keep you engaged in learning? So Kyle's going to talk a little bit more about our Heart Ready goal.
I think this is just a training aid, so I don't talk with my hands as much. So part of our Heart Ready, and the unique thing about this is you're trying to look at things head ready and heart ready separately, but Mary and myself, through our conversations, we find that they weave in and out of each other so frequently. So it's really hard to say something is just head ready or just heart ready. And so with the block schedule, you've heard that mentioned a few times. We wanted to look at, it was almost like some of our teachers felt it was the gift of time. Instead of that quick, we get our stuff out, we take attendance, we go through the agenda for the day, we do a quick anticipatory set and then into the lesson, and then, oh, now pack up in time for your next period. 75 minutes felt like a lot more time. So how do we utilize that time? And something that we notice is students now in the building with less passing periods, they spend 86% of their day inside of the classroom. So we want to make sure that's the most effective time that we are using in our students' day. So with that time in the classroom, we really looked at student dialogue. And part of that decision went into conversations with teachers, things that they were seeing, needs that wanted to be met, and looking at whole child. Actually, it was kind of a light bulb moment for me when, through these conversations, I got back and thinking of when I interviewed here at River Trails Middle School. And one of the questions that I asked was, what qualities do you want a River Trails student to have when they graduate? It was really funny. Not one answer was, I want them to have this % score on map data. I want them to, be a scholar in this content area. There were things like resiliency, risk taker, readiness to fail, things like that. So we felt that student dialogue provides students the ownership within their own learning and helps build those skills, along with more of those quantitative data points that we normally collect. It also focuses the emphasis on how students think and not what they should think, and taking that ownership. And then it just, obviously, studies show it increases in student production as well. So another piece to our Heart Ready as well is discipline, and I had a very similar statistic that Mr. Timmons had about the Ed Week research survey with the increase in misbehavior within schools. And that was something, honestly, we did notice an increase as well within school from return to the pandemic. So obviously that does have a direct impact on the students' learning during the school day. So really focused and worked hard with our district SEL goals, and then within our building, and kind of focusing on the CASEL competencies. Those are 5 main components of self-management, self-awareness, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. The large majority of those are hit on during our advisory time, which is 15 minutes per day. However, through class time and reteaching and teaching expectations, and one of our things we've tried to use is common language, because obviously coming from elementary to middle school, something that's unique is our students travel. So it's not just one homeroom teacher that they have for the majority of the day. So building some common language, and the most common language piece that we use is our 3 Bs to kind of really hammer home on those things. So looking at some of this, how do you measure that growth? What are some pieces you look at to kind of get a baseline and then see if you're achieving the growth that you want? And that's what we used our panorama survey for. I believe the first baseline data we got was in spring of 2022. And obviously now we have a full year's data at least. So looking at some of that, 2 of the areas that we really focused on were engagement from our students, and then teacher and student relationships. Because now that they're spending some more class time with them, we think that relationship component is extremely important in the success of our students. So our engagement, and this is our students' responses to these surveys, has stayed fairly level, from 72% of responses being favorable last spring to 70% of responses being favorable this spring. And then our teacher-student relationships, this is one I was proud of, if I'm being honest, that did increase. So last spring we had 75% of our students respond favorably to the relationships they had with staff members, and then within this year, it's up to 81%, which I think is impressive. However, there's always a but in a lot of things. We realized when conversations with students that we didn't have from our students a consistent definition of what engagement was. So that's now something we're kind of going back and trying to get we have common language that our staff members use. Now we're looking at that common language for our students and really hammering down what engagement looks like, feels like, and sounds like in our building.
Okay, so we did survey all of our stakeholders earlier in the spring. I actually sent it a couple times to parents because I was trying to get more responses. We did end up getting 35 parent responses, which is not too bad, not too shabby. But we were looking at just kind of how satisfied all of our stakeholders were with the block schedule, and also what are things that they feel we could improve upon. And for the students, what were challenges? But if you look up on the slide, you can see the big numbers. These are the percentage of students, teachers, and parents who are satisfied with the length of the block. Like Kyle mentioned, it's kind of fun to survey students because I'm not always sure how they interpret things, but we definitely want to hear student voice as well. When we talked about changing to the block schedule, a couple things that were some high priorities, high concerns for us were homework levels, stress levels, and how students were feeling about their time management and what they could do. So for the students, I mean, we did see a pretty high number of students who feel that their homework is manageable, but there's still kind of, it's like, what was it, like 58% said also that they are kind of stressed out by that. So that's something, when we looked at this with our school improvement team, we kind of discussed, okay, well, how can we make sure that they're managing their stress, adequately. Teachers overall, 71.4% were satisfied with the length of blocks. If I talk to some teachers, they're still going to say, I miss the old way. But we also have a lot of teachers who originally were kind of hesitant to change the block schedule, who are now saying, I can't imagine not having this much time. So, there's some happy faces, some sad faces. But with our staff, they were saying that, like, the length of time they have, the prep time they have, they do feel that their classwork is manageable. Their time to prepare is good as well. And then when we look at parents, again, it seemed pretty favorable with the length of blocks, as well as how much homework their students are getting. We did have some parents in the comment section wish their students had more homework. And again, it was a pretty high number for the parents who were reporting their students had less stress caused by it. I think for 7th and 8th grade parents, it probably was maybe a bigger adjustment for them because they were used to the old way. But we are excited to see what happens next year when we survey them again. So obviously there's celebrations, but there's also some growing pains, and Kyle's going to talk about some trends that we saw when we're looking at suggestions to improve and just some of the impacts that the students were noting.
We'll call them tougher adjustments and not growing pains, okay? No, and there were a lot of commonalities, which I don't kind of go back and forth on if it was a positive or a negative between the students, teachers, and parents for the things where it may be a little less desirable. One I found funny was the length of the passing period, because that's something that didn't change. So, and longer times and unstructured always makes me a little nervous. But that was something that they felt maybe wasn't as much time as needed. And then I think this was probably just for an adjustment for both staff and students, was we do offer opportunities in the school day, whether it's in our music programs of band and orchestra, for pull-out for sectionals, or for obviously some related services that we do provide. I think they really had to rethink what that looks like through a block schedule, because the day looks completely different. So I think that was kind of an adjustment that we're still kind of ironing out to make sure we're both balancing meeting the needs of the whole student and individual child, as well as not impacting instruction or minimally impacting instruction. So that was an adjustment as well. But other than that, another one that we honestly knew going in, and it was probably the one that is on there, all three, that when we talk to people is most frequently stated, is not having PE every day. That was an adjustment, and like I said, one we anticipated. However, walking into PE classrooms now with the longer block, I can tell you that there is so much movement, and kids are really getting the most out of that 75 minutes. So those are some of the things, and we're obviously, like Mrs. Kromeski said, anticipating and excited to survey the kids again to see if anything new comes up, or some of these things after a year of already having it done, where it becomes more routine, don't seem as big as problems as maybe that they are in year one.
Okay, so just to wrap up, looking ahead, next month I will bring new district goals for the upcoming year. And I actually learned in our training this past fall that this is something I bring to the board. So I did do it last year, but we'll be bringing those forth to talk a little bit more in detail and get some input on those as we continue to plan for the upcoming school year. In September, we will work August, right, because you're a month ahead. We will approve our budget for the year. Now, I had this set for this coming year, but left this structure as we had been doing it. I know this is a very long presentation with a lot of information, so I would like to perhaps have the buildings present shorter chunks throughout the course of the year when we visit their school for their presentation. So that's kind of that October to December timeframe. Probably pros and cons of each approach, but I'd like to try something different next year. And then in January, I anticipate bringing that strategic plan, district goal update forth as I did this year. So right before I wrap up, I would like to thank my administrative team and everyone for the work and the effort. It was the assistant principal's first to debut at a board meeting, so nice job. But this is a great group to work with. I'm incredibly proud of everything they do. You can see how much we collaborate and how aligned our work is. And so I thank them wholeheartedly for the work that they've done this year.
I've got some questions. Okay. Taking vigorous notes here. So I love the fact that we had our first graders, or our future first graders, visit the elementary schools. But I wonder, is there a need, and there may not be, but I'm just asking, is there a need to have the first graders, once they become first graders, visit with the other elementary school because they had friends in kindergarten that they are now no longer with? So just an idea. I don't know if that's something that's even plausible or needed, but I was just wondering what your opinions are of that. So that would really be to our 4 members of our elementary school team. Anyone want to answer that?
Would anybody want to speak to that? Just your opinion?
They had done things, they take group trips together here to see the musical, to do different things. So I think that's something that eventually, when they get to 5th grade, they will, but I mean, that's something we can explore, maybe something each year as a possibility.
I know I've talked to the PTC presidents.
These kinds of things, and I know, it's kind of been baby steps, right? Getting the presidents together. They've had a really, I would say, the collaboration of the 4 of them has been really exceeded my expectations. But we did start with a 1 district event, because once they start the school year, I found that they have so much going on that it was hard to squeak in something. But that was on my radar in terms of discussing that with them, but it just never came together. They decided, let's just do an all district thing rather than just do 1 grade level, but it's still there.
For our middle school team, do we have a contingency plan if 214 decides to abandon the block schedule? Would we keep it? Because not that we did it just because of them, but that was one of the main factors for looking at it. So I know that it's still kind of a pilot program in their eyes. So if for some reason I don't really need an answer to this right now, because I don't want to play the what if game all day long, but just a thought. I guess this one's for Jody. Were there any missteps or side steps that we learned from that we didn't really?
Well, I mean, Bill had kind of referenced that OKR process of goal setting, which is really us coming together every trimester and talking about our key results. And so I think we've created an environment where it's like, hey guys, this is what I set out to do this trimester, and I just didn't get it. Like, I missed, this happened or this happened, and I feel like, we've tried to create that environment, which, we're not perfect. We're not meeting everything that we set out to do, but we can talk about where we missed. We reflect why we missed. For me, I had my sights set on like getting out to every building so many times in classrooms, and then things happened in the winter and I didn't get out as much. And so, I try to be open with them so that they can say, the same thing. I'm going to talk about the district goals when I have my update, and that's me reflecting and doing things better. But I think as a whole, as a team, yes, we misstep, but they are awesome at reflecting and collaborating and then getting back on track.
I think the collaboration between the two elementary schools is phenomenal. It's something that I've wanted since I took my first oath of office. So the fact that I wish I would have counted how many times the word collaborate in some iteration came up, I would have stood up and applauded. So I thank you so much for that. What I'd like to hear maybe going forward are the results of this collaboration from the middle school team. Is how are you guys benefiting from them working so much together? So that's just something to kind of follow up on maybe in future meetings. But just the fact that word was brought up so many times, I had to restrain myself from giving you a standing O. So thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. And that was all that I had. So does anybody else? Donna, go ahead.
I'm curious. I heard Bill say that he changed the name RTI was changed to WINN. Is that across the district or just his school?
And Euclid is it's always been all-inclusive. The way, when I inherited the work down at Euclid before, 4 or 5 years ago. So at Euclid, it's really just an acronym change. It doesn't change the spirit of the time. And so,
that's actually kind of why we changed it to better represent the work
what
that was
really
happening during
there,
so that it was more inclusive of everybody.
I think one other change
Over time, did you used to have 2 blocks?
Yes.
And now
we're at 1 and 1.
Yeah.
Okay. So I thought RTI was a program that we bought into, that we were shelling out money for.
And a math interventionist, various interventionists. So when the board approves those roles, those experts help identify and then create interventions for students to close gaps in literacy and math. That still is happening during that time. The students who don't qualify for that type of intervention are also there and need something that's good for them, what they need at that time. And so that's why it's an all-inclusive time of day, but that's where our interventionists, when you say we bought into, it's not a program that we bought into, but we're investing in the expertise required to provide the learning for students to close that gap that they're coming to us with, that they're gaining over time.
I would also argue,
and I talked about this in our acceleration audits from the years prior, that kids who are at the 90th percentile and need materials, like maybe they need something extra to put, that's an intervention to me. So I look at response to intervention, not just, and that's kind of what Bill taught, it's not just that bottom percent, it's all, moving all kids up. So I would argue that some of those funds could also go towards accelerated programming to make sure that we're pushing those kids up too and filling those gaps.
Well, yes, and I know when Ethan was there, he was up at the top, so he was getting intervention at the top. So it should still be going on. And then the other question I have, it really struck me. Mr. Timmons talked about 80 to 85% of the math kids, scored high, or a lot of the kids scored in the 80, 85%. So instead of having a mix of everybody in the classroom, you put them all together. Is that what I heard you basically say?
It's not necessarily together. It's similar. So let's say there are 20 of them. You would put all 20 in one classroom. You'd put groups of them together so that they could have peers that are around that same level that they're at.
Okay.
So it's still the heterogeneous grouping, while also making it easier for the teacher to plan for groups of students as opposed to individual student needs.
Okay, got it. because I got real scared there because a flag went up that said trekking. And that's, okay, so what you basically have is back in my generation, we had the redbirds, the bluebirds, and the robins. So that's what you've got in a classroom now for the teachers. Okay, got it. Thank you.
You never. Anybody else? Sure, go ahead, Becky.
I was just gonna say I agree with I think that the Prairie Trails team can probably tell you that those little kindergartners really bonded and are sad to miss their chipmunk friends. So you have this bond that you don't have to reestablish in 5th grade. It's already there. And so if you can do things like a picnic lunch or, I don't know, I don't know what the ideas are, but maybe the PTCs can help with that. But also the families, like you're already creating that community, like that there's a lot of new parents that have found their first friends there that like now they're in separate schools. So anything we can do to bond that I think helps. And I would just say from the Indian Grove, like the WIN classes were a big hit. Maybe giving some examples, like they had a book club this spring and they all they've divided up and read Holes or whatever book they were doing. So it was just cool. I think the other collaboration that I had a 3rd grader, which is always that class is big for some reason. So they actually mixed the classes when they went to specials this year, which I thought was huge because maybe you don't have your found friend in one class, but they were able to mix and get to know everybody in art or music or PE. So thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I just want to echo Bill's comments about the collaboration. That was, it was very fortuitous of you to see that there was a missing annual goals piece. And I can see throughout the presentation how that lent to, the common language, which is really important to, creating culture, but also, just facilitating, a consistent environment for the kids as they transition through the schools and as they're just taught their lessons. They start off with certain things and they learn terminology and it carries forward. That's it doesn't happen by accident, and that happens because there's collaboration amongst the administration that then moves it throughout the educators and then ultimately the students. So just great job overall.
Okay, moving on to business. The revised Euclid construction cost estimates will be moved to our July meeting. So that brings us to the Euclid electrical switchgear equipment bid. This is an action item.
Okay, at the October 18th board meeting, the board approved proceeding with it's really the 2023 through 2025 Euclid and Indian Grove infrastructure projects. And we talked a lot about supply chain and lead times and things like that at that meeting. Electrical switchgear equipment is still experiencing long lead times due to a global shortage of circuit breakers, which are a main component of the equipment. The lead times have been quoted up to 1 year, so we thought it was necessary to order that part of the equipment before the bids on the remainder of the projects went out. So we went out to bid with that, and they were received on June 12th. We only received one bid, Prospect Electric Company, for $134,000. IMEG, our engineering firm, and Nicholas Construction have reviewed the bid. Prospect Electric Company is a local electrical contractor that they've both worked with numerous times. It's their experience with K-12 construction and renovation. The amount of it is consistent with the estimates that we looked at back in October. So the recommendation is that the Board of Education accept the $134,000 bid from Prospect Electric Company, and the project will be funded from the capital projects fund balances. Just a little bit on the timeline before we move on. The construction documents are going out to bid on July 14th. They'll be ready then. The bids will be due on August 8th. At the July 18th board meeting, we'll look at the revised cost estimates as well as review the mechanical equipment, which Train, we were looking at purchasing through Train and a purchasing cooperative. Then at the August 15th, we plan on having a operations committee meeting before the board meeting. The intent would be to approve the mechanical, because those do have long lead times too, so we get those ahead of time. And then we will have the bids in, but they will not be reviewed yet, but we can take a preliminary look at those at that meeting. And then final project approval would be at the September 19th board meeting.
Okay, thank you. Can I get motion and a second to accept the bid from Prospect Electric Company not to exceed $134,000?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Camardo, second by Ronstadt. Any questions? Hearing none. Mrs. Johnson, could you please call roll?
I vote yes. Grimpy?
Yes.
Friedland?
Yes.
Camardo?
Yes.
4, 5. Ronstadt?
Yes.
Bianchini?
Yes.
And Pfisterer.
Yes.
Motion.
Okay, next up is the soccer pitch award bids. This is an information and action item.
Well, I have some really good news to tell you before we get started. The village did approve additional money for this project, so they are now putting in $186,000. And Danny Martinez was able to raise another $10,000, so he's up to $44,000. So we do have the cost of the project covered. Anyway, and we have an intergovernmental agreement that was approved back in February to do this soccer pitch with the village funding it from some federal funds. So it was a wonderful opportunity for our school, and Euclid's very excited about this. When we went to do the bid, we realized we didn't have the expertise, so we hired a landscape architect engineering firm, JSD Professional Services, to put together all the construction documents. There was land preparation and drainage and, what do we put around this soccer pitch and things like that we needed their services to help us with. The bid was then opened on June 7th at 2 p.m. We received 4 bids, and the low bid was E. Hoffman at $215,361.50. JSD Professional Services has reviewed the low bid contractor and spoken with their references, and all the references say that they would work with them again, and they had positive things to say about the work performed. So we are recommending that we do go with the low bid. As I said, they did come in, particularly when we added in the costs of the landscape architect as well as this bid. The costs came in higher than we had originally planned. The original estimate was $183,792. The final estimate with the landscape architect and the survey is $230,000. But the village has approved $186,000, and Daniel Martinez has raised $44,000, so that will cover the cost of the construction. Our anticipation is that we will do the construction this fall with completion sometime in October to November. It will depend on how long it takes to get the actual soccer pitch. It comes from Germany to do, but we are hopeful that we can get it done before the cold weather comes in. There will be a fence around it to keep it safe for the students. So one thing that we did want to discuss is whether or not the board would consider having sponsor logos on the inside of the field panels. That would help bring in more sponsors and help us cover the costs of maintenance. Otherwise, the district will be absorbing all any maintenance costs that come up. It is not in our current policy, but I did provide a copy of the press policy, which does allow for this. The board would be approving anything that, any sponsors that would come up. I do actually, I printed out a couple pictures I'll pass around of kind of what it would look like inside the soccer pitch if we did that. And if the board is in favor of doing something like that, then the policy would go to the policy committee and come through all those channels before we actually allowed it. So with that, the recommendation is that there is an amendment to the intergovernmental agreement that covers the additional cost, that we approve that amendment to the intergovernmental agreement with the Village of Mount Prospect. We accept the $215,361.50 bid from E. Hoffman, Inc. And in addition, it's recommended that the Board of Education allow sponsor logos for the inside of the soccer field and make a change to the current policy.
Okay, so we'll attack each one of these separately here. So thank you for your presentation. Let me entertain a motion in a second to adopt the amendment to the intergovernmental agreement with the Village of Mount Prospect. Moved by Grimpy.
Second.
So let me entertain a motion in a second. I would like to entertain a motion in a second to accept the bid from E. Hoffman, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $215,361.50.
So moved.
Moved by Friedland.
Second.
Second by Ron.
When we talk about collaboration, I just want to thank all of the Euclid staff and Lyndall and obviously the Village of Mount Prospect and Danny, obviously, for not just bringing this idea to our community, which I think is going to be just unbelievable, but just the ongoing efforts and for doing all of that work and for really putting in something that's going to benefit everybody. So thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, could you call roll, please?
Sure. Ronstadt?
An enthusiastic yes.
Pfisterer?
Yes.
Bianchini?
Yes.
Grimpy?
Yes.
I vote yes. Camardo? And
Yes.
Friedland?
Yes.
Did I already call Camardo?
I don't think you could hear me. I said yes.
Okay. Oh. I was going to say, who did I miss? Did I get everybody?
Is your second one the amendment to the intergovernmental agreement? Okay, so we had a motion by Grimpy and a second by Friedland. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Hearing none?
Regarding what?
What? Hello?
Just the
This is for the
intergovernmental
amendment
questions?
to the intergovernmental agreement with the Village of Mount Prospect.
No, I'd just like to compliment Danny on being such a great visionary, and the execution and follow-through, amazing. We absolutely should do this. If you can raise $44,000 and get this, you can sell sponsorships through Wazoo. So this is going to be fantastic. Looking forward to it.
Anybody else? Hearing none, could you please call roll? I was the motion and Friedland was the second. You're welcome.
Okay, Pfisterer?
Yes.
Ronstadt?
Yes.
Grimpy?
Yes.
I vote yes. Bianchini,
Yes.
Friedland,
Yes.
and Camardo.
Yes.
Okay, our third and final motion for this is, can I get a motion and a second to allow sponsor logos for the inside of the soccer field and make the change to the current policy? This would actually end up going to the policy committee first.
Right, so I guess that's where my,
Why would we need to have a motion?
that was my confusion too. That was
But I guess I'm looking for whether or not the whole board would be in favor, or maybe not the whole board, but enough of board members would be in favor of this that it is worth taking to the policy committee. But if you prefer to wait, yeah.
So can I get a motion and a second?
so moved.
Moved by Friedland,
Second.
second by Bianchini. Does anybody have any comments or questions?
So this is a motion to direct the policy committee to write or create a policy for advertisements.
Correct.
I mean, I guess I just have if it was to like explore the policy, I just have a lot of questions. Like, are other districts do advertisements, 214? Who would sell it? Who would collect? Like all of those questions, and I don't know.
Like
I
I've
think
seen
that
other
comes
districts do it for
before.
like a scoreboard.
Yeah.
You know, especially in their gym and on their football field or soccer pitch, mainly for high schools. I don't know that I've seen one for an elementary school, but
Right.
It
I'm not
exists.
opposed. I just have a lot of questions before writing a full like I don't know, chicken or egg, which comes first, but.
Well, I mean, if four people are opposing of it, then it's dead there. It doesn't go to the policy committee. But then then they don't have to waste their time rewriting a policy that they're going to come back and it's going to be.
So if we allow, I'm sorry. If we allow this to go to the policy committee, we're not, if I vote yes to go to the policy committee, I'm not voting to go ahead and allow company advertising.
Technically, you're correct.
Okay. So going to the policy committee is strictly to explore the idea, talk about it, then it would have to come back to the board, and the board would then decide whether they want to have company advertising.
You have to approve that change of the policy.
Correct. So then it would just be the three policy people making the change to the policy?
Well, and then bringing it to the full board for probably a first review and a second review.
Okay.
Right, it would be our standard policy acceptance process. Yeah.
Okay. But in no way at this point in time, or at the policy committee, because I sit on the policy committee, am I being roped into approving company advertising on school property?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, I think that makes this discussion that important so that we have some direction going into the policy committee from everyone.
Well, that's what I thought tonight was going to be.
Well, and I heard things that Dr. Lindell said that, that we'd have the ability to approve sponsors and things like that. And I assume that would come out of the policy. I mean, obviously, we want age-appropriate sponsors out there. We don't need like the vape store advertising. So we'll have some gates and things that we can kind of put out in the policy. But
Right, well, that's like that policy that Lindell included that's just straight out of press. Like, we just happen to have our own piece that we say like in our personal board agreements and policies that we're saying that we don't do that. But like the press is very specific, or well, like the IASB issued piece is very specific in what can and cannot be utilized for sponsorship. So, right, so I'm not necessarily concerned about that, but like to Becky's point, like I'm just curious as to who is going to do this, because obviously every single sponsor isn't going to come to us. This will become correct if I'm incorrect, please correct me. But so none of, like, all of these sponsorships wouldn't necessarily come to the board for approval. Like this would be an administrative piece, correct? That would then be managed within the building.
That's the way I interpret it, but since we've never done that before, I guess that's time for us to develop that policy and procedure.
Yeah, and I guess what the policy board, or the policy committee can do is to develop that framework. I mean, they can.
If it passes.
If it passes.
No, and I think that's what Becky was trying to say, is we don't want to necessarily plop things like, I know Karen already put her head down because God knows you don't. Because I just want to load everybody up over there. But I think it's just more making sure that it's manageable so that we're not interfering in, we're not taking a bunch of time to try to figure this out for at the building.
But I think the big picture is yes or no to the policy, because as press reads, if we go with that language, it says procedures established by the superintendent, and then there are some guidelines. So I don't bring procedures back here, but it would be a procedure that is developed that would function however it ends up functioning. But if you yes or no the policy, the procedure would come after that.
So what I don't like about this is if we don't pass it, the policy, the purpose of getting sponsorship is to help with the maintenance of it, which we don't know how much that's going to be. So if we don't pass it, then the district will be paying for the maintenance of this soccer pitch. So I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that.
Until we decide to change the policy later, which can be reviewed and.
Yeah, I mean, we could see how much it costs to maintain the soccer pitch and then do it at a later date as well.
I mean, we're intending that most of it will at least originally be done by our maintenance staff, but it could come down the road, particularly as it gets older, that it needs some more expensive maintenance. And then the sponsorships would help us out.
I do like the distraction point. Bring up a good point there. I mean, how many dollars are we going to bring in versus added administrative efforts here?
Where does the money from the sponsors, where would it go? What line item would it fall in?
Other local revenue, I guess?
So at this point in time, because we don't know what the maintenance costs, it gets thrown into the general fund, basically.
Or it's possible it may go into an activity fund, or I haven't quite figured.
So the sponsors,
if we want to track it, we can figure out a way to track it so we would know how much has been given.
So what were the sponsors told they were sponsoring? What are they sponsoring? So
I don't think we've gone.
Scott.
No, though. That's different. He has the $44,000. He did not have to commit to sponsoring for that $44,000. This is to get additional money. He has other businesses that are interested if they could be a sponsor, and then they would, I don't know how much, a couple $1,000 or. $5,000 to $10,000. Okay, $5,000 to $10,000 per year, or.
Could be, per year for 5 years. Could be.
Okay.
So what's the $44,000 for?
That was just to help cover the additional construction costs. Because the bids came in higher than what we originally discussed.
Plus, we needed the services of a landscape architect.
So that was money that he went out and individually raised as an investment
Yes.
into the soccer pitch.
He
It has
did.
nothing to do with any, correct?
Correct.
I'd like to know who those people are.
No.
Seriously. I really want to know who gave us more money. if nobody else wants to know it, okay, fine. But
I mean, we will be getting a donation, and then we can recognize the people that have donated and some other things like that, too.
Okay, so
Yeah.
all of that money will then come to us as a donation, and we will accept it as a donation
Correct.
and read it into the minutes.
Yes, at the next board meeting.
All right, can I throw out a suggestion here? I don't know what the soccer equivalent of a punt is, if you know. But I think that we need to get a little bit, it's a punt? Okay, sorry. American football. But I'm kind of thinking that we maybe let this one simmer for a little bit. Let's get some maintenance costs, let's get it built, see what it looks like, and then we can bring this up at a later date.
Maintenance costs will.
Yeah, but I'm still kind of like, let's at least punt maybe until fall when the thing's up, and we can go take a look at it and see aesthetically what we would think there to consider that. That's just my suggestion. Not a yes or no, just a let's talk about it later. Let's get it built first.
Can't we just get the policy committee to draft an initial policy of ideas to open it up and say we may accept sponsorship? We're not obligated to. In the policy, they can outline who's going to approve it, who's going to, solicit it, things of that nature on the admin team.
Well, so we wouldn't do that. We would keep it as general as possible in terms
Even
of
better.
in terms of
Great.
procedure on the back end. But I mean, we can
Just to let them, just say policy committee present something back to us saying that you have the option to approve a sponsorship.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it. I'm just saying we don't need to do it right now.
Why wait? What are we waiting for by just letting the policy committee say, at your next meeting, whenever it's conducive for you, you can start drafting?
Because if four
a
of us are
proposal?
against it, then that's a waste of their time.
I'm not getting the impression anybody's like hard against it. There's
Well,
definitely.
I'm saying, so you're
I'm
gonna
against
change
it.
You're against the policy committee? Okay.
I'm against having corporate sponsorship on our property.
So am I.
Okay. All right, well, I guess that's a good motion then right now. So I guess over the next 4 months, we just discuss if you change your mind or not? Otherwise, isn't that the vote right now? Because to your point, if you're against it now, and then if Donna's against it now, okay, okay. Okay. Fair enough, fair enough.
I also anticipate that we will be bringing regular updates on how things are going. Once it's built, I'm sure, hopefully not, but there may be some surprises along the way. So I don't know if this issue of maintaining will ever die completely, because we'll continue to talk about what we've learned through the process. So really, the direction is yes, policy, or no, not going to policy right now.
So we're looking for a motion and a second. Are we-
Okay, so this is a motion to send this to the policy committee to have them look at advertising on school property from companies, okay?
Correct.
So do you want this to go to committee? Ronstadt?
You're gonna make me first.
Well,
I don't know. I'm still on the fence.
okay. Grimpy?
No.
3. Pfisterer?
Oh, me? Yes.
3, 4. Friedland? Do you want it to go to committee now?
I know what the. No.
Bianchini?
Yes.
I vote no. And that's Camardo?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, Ronstadt? Turns out you're the deciding one. Should have gone first.
I was trying to punt it because I want to say.
Do you want it to go to committee now?
It's okay either way.
No.
Okay, so motion fails, it doesn't.
Okay, committee report. Finance Committee is up first. Mrs. Johnson, you are the chair.
The Finance Committee met before this meeting at 6 o'clock, and there was a lot of stuff that was covered by Dr. Schuster, and she is the one who's more qualified to talk about the finance, about the, what is it, the budget overview and everything. So I will turn it over to her. Do you want me to hold your button down?
Oh,
while you talk?
it's okay, I can do it. Okay. So the this is into 2023-24. This budget provides for the staff all the instructional materials, the programs, the curriculum, the facilities. We're estimating about 1,500 students in preschool through 8th grade. It is aligned to all the strategic planning goals that you've heard about today and the ones that you'll hear about in July. One thing to note is that part of our strategic plan, we do evaluate our programs to make sure that they're effective. We evaluate our staffing plans also for effectiveness. I think you heard about a couple interventionists that have been making a difference at Prairie Trails today. Department budgets are developed from pretty much a zero base every year. And as you've heard, we look for any kind of grant opportunities that we can find to help us fund some of these programs. We've also been very efficient over the many years. So we've implemented programs that have saved money in operations, staffing, transportation, health insurance, special education. We've reduced supplies. We've reduced our energy costs. So that helps to give us the positive budget you're going to see today. Our total operating fund revenues are $29,543,671. Total operating fund expenditures are $27,166,102, which gives us, even when you add in, we transfer money to pay for copiers and some debts that are paid out of our operating funds, it's still an operating surplus of $1,040,602 for next year. So then in addition, we are planning to transfer $2 million from our O&M fund to the capital project fund to help fund the infrastructure projects. That includes about $335,000 of 2022 levy rebates that we should be getting this coming year. Just to emphasize some of the grants that we've received over the last couple years, ESSER 3 is over $1 million. We've had a couple school maintenance grants. The Clean Energy Grant gave us $2 million for construction. We have almost $500,000 from the Department of Justice for security, all the cameras that we want to put in. We had a partnership with MWRD for $650,000 for the parking lot at this school. We got the electric school bus, was worth almost $300,000. Every year, Bosch funds some of our STEM programs. You'll see, if you walk out that door over there, you can see the gardens that they help fund this year, as well as some other STEM instruction. The expenditures are based on the 2022-26 negotiated contract. The staffing plan is what you've been reviewing all along. We have some staffing decreases for enrollment. 3 teachers at Euclid, 1 kindergarten teacher at Prairie Trails, and a teacher at the middle school. Prairie Trails kindergarten is currently only at 124. We are actually have enough to go up to 140 students, enough staff in the plan. We had program additions for a district multilingual teacher and the Prairie Trails assistant principal, which you've already heard about. Big emphasis for next year is the new math curriculum at the elementary schools. And we will continue on professional development in, well, math will be a big one, but also equity and collaboration, differentiation, computer literacy skills, and some other things. We will also continue with our assessments you heard about today. This budget contains a little over $11 million for construction expenditures, which would be what we will spend between July 1st and June 30th of next year. It's a bit of an estimate, but we are planning that there will be a $10 million bond sale in the spring to help fund that. And some of the other funding is coming from the tax rebates, the ESSER, about $770,000 from ESSER 3, the $3 million from the sale of Nipper School, and then our fund balance transfers. So that's kind of a summary of all of it. There are $250,000 of contingencies in there for staff, special education, and technology. The timeline is that the board approves this tentative budget for display, and then we would display it for at least 30 days and bring it back for a public hearing and adopt the budget in August, at the August 15th board meeting, and file it with the state before the end of September.
Thank you, Dr. Schuster. Okay, let's see. I would like to entertain a motion and a second to approve the displaying for review and approval of the fiscal year 2024 budget timeline.
Second.
Moved by Johnson, second by Ronstadt. Comments or questions?
Yeah, I actually have a question. So for our conference, I hate that. When he does the projections for our enrollment, like when do those get updated?
He is currently updating them, so
Right,
I should have some update, I hope, by the next meeting.
Okay, how often does he look at that?
About every 2 years or so, 2 or 3 years, maybe 3 years.
Every 3? Okay, I couldn't remember from our last review. Okay, and then one other question. It's about the interventionist piece. So for Euclid, I know we lost. I mean, well, obviously you designated it here, but for the retiree, so did we not keep an interventionist and find a replacement, or was that just the drop of a single interventionist? I was a little confused.
What happened was Euclid preferred to put that person, rather than replacing the interventionist, putting that person and making smaller sections in 5th grade.
Okay, because that 4th grade class was so big?
Yes.
Okay, so are there going to be 5 sections? Sorry, actually, that's not important.
4 sections.
Oh, they're still going to stick with 4? Okay, but try to break them out a little bit more for... I thought there were already 4 sections.
We were slotted to go down to 3 sections. And we opted to support the tier 1 instruction by keeping the class sizes small.
Okay, perfect.
Smaller like they were this year.
Got it, okay. Thank you for the explanation, because that, I don't ever want to lose an interventionist.
And it wasn't a loss of, it was just a use of funds in a different way for a year. So next year, when we look back, and I'm not asking for another section in another place, that would be lower than what's allotted. I still have that.
Perfect, that FTE.
Yes, I still have that, Title II funds, Title I funds for that position.
For that purpose. Okay, awesome. And then my other question, just at Prairie Trails, do we only have one interventionist there?
Currently this year, we hired an interventionist for reading and a little bit of math. Next year, we'll be having a full-time EL, our multilingual interventions.
So we'll have 2? Not to sound silly, because I know we are very conservative and we run our staff lean. Is 2 enough?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot, Amy. So I'm just because we keep talking about all of these things coming off of COVID and these kids that haven't had preschool and,
Well, I think I encourage them. We try to make small adjustments
use them wisely, because we can add as many staff as we want, but if they're not being purposeful or effective in their role, they don't have direction, then we're wasting that FTE. So I think, we've tried to move a little bit at a time, make sure that that is doing what we want it to do, and then brainstorm from there.
And I apologize. That was inappropriate of me to ask her. I should have just asked you. I'm always concerned with our littlest people. You know what I'm trying to say. So I apologize for putting you on the spot. That wasn't appropriate.
Okay. Fistover,
Yes.
Ronstadt,
Yes.
Camardo,
Yes.
Grimpy,
Yes.
Bianchini.
Yes.
I vote yes, and Friedland.
Yes.
Next up is the NSSEO update. Mr. Ronstadt, you are our representative.
Okay, lots of activity at NSSEO. Obviously, Dr. Hackett retiring here, but also lost a minor principal and hired a new one. And just some other administrative staff turnover. Dr. Schnorr has been working very closely with Dr. Hackett on a transition. So far so good. Hoping for a nice smooth transition there. I was elected board president. So very, very excited about that. I'm very, very passionate about NSSEO and the mission, and just really excited to see the district through the next year here. Also, Dr. Brad Carter was promoted to associate superintendent. So continuing to make great progress just overall, and hiring and ESY is going on right now, and same thing kind of going on here, gearing up for the next school year.
Thank you. I have a very quick PR committee update. We have a meeting on July 11th. The invitation has gone out, so the members should have that in their inbox. Next up is the President's Report. Upcoming events. Independence Day, the office will be closed. The district office will be closed on Tuesday, July 4th. We have a regular board meeting on July 18th. School dates, August 7th, New Teacher Orientation Day. August 8th, New Teacher Orientation Day 2. August 9th, the Innovation Symposium. August 16th, All Staff Institute Day 1. August 17th, All Staff Institute Day 2. August 18th will be the first day of school for grades 1 through 5, and then August 21st will be our first day of school for kindergarten.
So I just want to say, when does RTMS start? Do they just not? I just thought it odd. That's all.
August 8th. So yeah, same as 1st through 5th.
I was
Sorry.
joking, but just for everybody.
I missed the laugh track. Thanks. The Superintendent's Report. Dr. Megley, you are up.
Okay, a couple of things. One, just to hit on staffing. I've talked about this in my Friday updates. Principals have been knocking out hiring. Actually, everybody has been really working on hiring. I don't really have an update right now, but just to know, watch those Friday updates, because things literally change from Friday to today. I think, last one of my updates was about payroll, but that one fell through. So I try to keep up on the offers that we're making and the ones that fall through, and different things. So, things change weekly. So that's probably the best place to get that information. District goals, talked about that. I will be bringing forth district goals for information and dialogue next month. I think, for me, my reflection is that I really liked having district goals. I want to make sure that this is a regular routine. Patty has put it in our little sketch agenda to do this every year. In my perfect world, I would have brought those a little bit earlier. So just getting on a pattern of making sure that you have eyes on those, on what I'm proposing. You can give me feedback and they can be approved. So that's going to be a regular occurrence moving forward. Again, my other reflection is that, I'm trying to find a really good balance between too much, too broad, and too narrow. So in this year, I've narrowed the focus a little bit. Very similar structure in terms of those three buckets with communication, collaboration, and curriculum, but narrowed the scope a little bit further and gave the team some non-negotiables, which is really just, here's what I want to see you do as you roll this out. There's still that loose, tight functionality of them, but I felt like maybe I gave them too much wiggle room because I could see how that was just a little bit too much, like to give the teams, and felt like, well, do I do all of these? Do I just pick one? So I've tightened that up a little bit, but I'll present those next month. Summer school is going really well. Honestly, I thank Zach Scipione every year. He's kind of he's our principal there, and he's the PE teacher at Euclid with Type 75. He's really enjoyed this leadership opportunity, but he has just continued to build on the programming and smooth operating every single year. So today, the fire department was there, the fire department educator, she had her stuffed Dalmatian, and the wolves were there today. So, fun, always trying to make it fun and engaging for the kids. So that's going really well. Construction update. So roof is going great. The weather's been very cooperative. That's usually the biggest thing that you don't know that can delay a project. So as I mentioned in one of my updates, they're starting on that south side and kind of moving in sections around the building. I also added last week that there was a delay in the steel delivery, which really was a couple of days, like nothing traumatic. But now the latest is some, not confusion, but some disagreement between the plans with the steel workers and the architect and all of that. So they're working through those sections. The steel workers are there working, but there's been, again, like we anticipate a little bit of a delay there. So I know Dan says we'll know in a couple of days, in a week. As they're moving in sections, each movement impacts the next layer. So at some point, Dan and his crew need to get back in those classrooms to get them back set up. So he has a timeline in his mind of making sure everybody, the roof is moving, the steel worker's moving, the paint is moving, and he's getting his crew in there to get those classrooms ready. So he's got his eye on the long-term calendar. So he's really hoping, making sure that things are pushing along. So honestly, I think all in all, I don't want to say it, knock on wood, but going. They're going. That's all I'm going to say.
I have a minor construction concern. Do we know that the permeable pavers can withstand 3 dumpsters and a truck with a giant crane on it? And can we at least have those inspected before everybody packs everything up and takes off to the next job?
Yes.
Just in case, because if anything, if they've ruined any of them, then I would want them to pay to replace them.
The biggest indicator, what would be cracks and just so I'm sure that's pretty typical of any dam. I mean, they could create damage anywhere. So we'll make sure I'll relay that to Dan to make sure that he checks that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I would just like to comment that driving by at night with the lights on the Euclid side, I can see the plastic and where they're pulling the tiles and they're working in the ceiling. So that was kind of interesting to see it all. It's like, oh, those rooms are all empty. You can't see that during the day. It's only at night because the lights are on. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Okay, one more thing. So last thing I want to revisit is my personal goals. I know that we kind of went round and round, but everybody's here. So I just need a little bit more direction. I happen to have a superintendent lunch today, and I know that I asked this question before, but none of my superintendent counterparts have growth goals with percentages. A lot of their goals they're tied to student growth, but it's more of we'll monitor, we'll collaborate and make sure that the curriculum audit cycle is going. So I want to make sure that I hear from everyone. I did not bring back a draft. I can propose a couple of things. One of my goals is about instructional leadership, so I can add student growth generally as part of that. 2, I can make sure to bring back data more frequently after testing cycles. But 3, my biggest hurdle was that the only data that I can like test score wise attached to my contract that runs from July 1st to March 1st is Ames Web, which is only KN1, which is probably why that was the sample that you had. We are going to move away from winter testing of MAP because we are testing so frequently with a lot of our kids. Those will be select groups, so I wouldn't even have fall to winter MAP testing for everyone. So again, wanted to open it up for discussion so that I had better direction so that I could bring back a good draft next month.
If you want to do like a straw poll, I'm fine with a general student growth goal. It doesn't, I don't feel that it has to be tied to a specific percentage. And you just, in my opinion, hit the nail on the head. It's based off of when we do our review and assessment of you in March, though that data is just not there. So if it's going to be a goal, I'm okay with it not being tied to a specific percentage just to know that it's happening. I personally am fine with that. So I'll let the board voice their opinions as well. Go ahead.
I was just curious, I mean, I really got excited when I saw your one, in the beginning of your presentation, you had said that, I think it was yours, you're looking for 65% of the students to meet their growth target in reading and math. So you don't have to put a percent in there, but since you've made that a district goal, kind of tie it to yours.
Yeah, and so
that's what
that's how I
was
could
looking
edit
for.
mine. So instead of that instructional leadership, it really is, it's instructional leadership, but really geared towards student growth and achievement. I mean, that's
Okay.
the goal.
And I can live with that.
Okay. But I could also, as I said, I mean, I'm happy to present more frequently so that we can measure against the 5-year goal, or at least give some snippets every trimester, what
Right,
have you.
Right, yeah, and I like that. I saw that and I thought, well, that's basically your district goal, that's what everybody's working on, and that's what you've told them to do, so that basically is your goal. So, okay, I'm fine with that. And since I was the one that asked for a percentage, I'm sure the rest of you guys, you don't have to comment.
Or just if you're comfortable with that.
Yes.
Everybody good? Okay.
And that's all. Thank you.
Okay, we had 5 FOIA requests to keep Patty busy because she had nothing else to do. Thank you, Patty. Brings us to future topics. Again, we make sure you save the date. Our joint annual conference is November 17th to the 19th, and we have our Board of Education self-evaluation/retreat on August 30th, which will be at Prairie Trail School. Does anyone have any other topics for consideration to be placed on the future board agenda?
Can we talk about the sponsorship policy again in October?
As long as we get 4 people or more to approve,
Yes.
to agree with that.
Can we make a motion? Is that, or is this just like a
It's
straw
not-
It's not a
poll?
motion.
It's not a motion, it's just,
Would 4 people like to talk about it again in October?
Yes.
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 there we go. Any other future topics? Proposed future topics? Okay, at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion and a second to go into closed session for the matters of personnel and litigation at 9:01 PM. The board will not be taking any action upon exit of the closed session.
So moved. Second.
Okay, that's what I figured, 30 to 40 was a lot. Hey, I'm impressed, it's 9:30.
Moved by Friedland, second by Camardo.
Okay, ready?
Yep.
Ronstadt,
Yes.
Quimby,
Yes.
I vote yes. Friedland,
Yes.
Camardo,
Yes.
Bianchini.
Yes.
I wanna pull this, I wanna.
Come on. No
Miss
cookies
Eula.
for you.
Yes. Okay, okay. Motion carried.
We are adjourned at 9:39.
Well done. Thank you for the cookies.
July 18th.
Yeah, did you see it?
Schedule,
So
I
much
love
stress
it.
at A3 cookies.
Yep.
Wow, that's sad, because that means summer's like